I actually get to a little paralyzed if it gets too crazy. And you know what I'm not of the two of us, I am not unique in this regard, right? You occasionally get this way too, where you feel a little like there's too much on your plate. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know. I mean, we're all different.
Chaos. I think often I remind myself that, chaos often is the start of something great, right?
That's fair. But chaos in and of itself is not necessarily a good state to remain in, right?
You got to move beyond it.
You got to move beyond it. So one of my tricks for getting myself out of the chaos is to-do lists. Like just starting to break it down. Like, okay, I've got this thing coming up. It's a major change. It's chaos, right? I don't know what to do. I've never done this thing before. That's usually what chaos means. Is like, it's not that it's not orderly necessarily. It's that I don't know how to see the order in it, right? Because with some things, like sitting down to do a podcast, it could look chaotic. It's like, well, there's so many different like variables and things in the air. It's like, well, yeah. But what I do is I do this one first and this one second and this one third and this one fourth. And then boom, the podcast is out. It's done. And
yeah, it's cool.
Right. But it is a jumble of chaotic things, or a jumble of things that appears chaotic. And so what I do is I start trying to make order of it. I might not make the most efficient order the first time I do something. In fact, I'm sure that I won't. But that doesn't stop me, or it usually doesn't stop me from applying some sort of order to it. Even if it's a bad order, it just allows me to start breaking it down. I like to say that I use calculus every day, and that's what I learned in calculus, is to take a seemingly insurmountable problem and just break it down into the smallest parts that I can until I can solve those little things. It's like, okay, well, I got to do this huge thing. In fact, I have a huge thing going on, but I can't talk about it publicly until next week because it's not, there's news happening that's not my news to share. But once the news is shared, I have this thing that's super chaotic and somewhat stressful for me, but I'm learning to break it down. So how do you address, how do you process and work through it when you get to chaos?
The first thing that really helps me is that phrase I said before, realizing that I have vast experience of getting to the other side of it. So I think back, I'm like, oh, I've done this over and over in my life where everything's nuts, but then I know it's going to get under control.
Yes.
And I know good things are going to come out of it. I may not know what those good things are yet.
Right.
But I know that just got to embrace it. And I'm not a to-do list person, but I am a to-did list person.
Interesting.
We've talked about a lot because I kind of power through my day, and I find I'm more productive when I let myself off the leash a bit and bounce around into tasks. And then, or at least that's what I've convinced myself.
But
then at the end of the day,
you have enough evidence to support this fallacy.
Yes. Well, I have enough going on that I can go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, I always take a few minutes to create the list of things I did get done. And that will point me, I think, becomes my North Star. Am I really moving towards getting the chaos under control, or am I fooling myself? And did I just burn, 8 hours because I thought I was getting something done? So that's my rubric. It tells me if I'm headed in that direction, but I do it at the end. I'm kind of a backwards guy.
So we really, I mean, I enjoy a good to-did list. Don't get me wrong, but my life, we've talked about this a lot. I never quite realized that we are fundamentally different in this, where I like to have my order is set up in front. I will create the to-do list, and then I'll call audibles the whole way through. I'll improvise my way through my to-do list. Like it's not hard and fast once I've created it, but the process of creating it is what helps me find an entry point into the chaos, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
whereas you just dive in and then look back and say, okay, well, I let myself sort of freeform this. Was that valuable? And if the answer was no, then my guess is even without it being overly intentional, your path for the next day is a little clearer.